Opportunity cost is the most important principle that you need to know when you're trying to construct an agent composition in Valorant. It's also a useful principle for other areas of life too, but we're talking Valorant right now. So let's first look at the definition so we can start to get our bearings. If you've never heard of this before, the first definition that pops up on Google is the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. So to kind of gamify this language a little bit, what are you losing out on if you pick a Reyna as opposed to Jet on this particular composition that you might be looking at? So that's the fundamental question, and that is what we're going to be doing throughout this video. And I'm going to sort of throw some examples out there, and then we're going to arrive at how I picked what I think would be a pretty awesome Breeze composition. So you're probably wondering, why are we on Icebox? It's not even in the pool. Well, it doesn't matter, because I'm just showing you an example of one aspect that makes Sova the best initiator when it comes to playing Icebox. So this is our first example. And as you can see, we've got Sova on the various sort of opening kind of positions that you could be on, whether that's at B long, A main, or mid. And if we understand the basics around how play works on Icebox, we understand that there's these very long ranges and that there's lots of AWP lines that can be on all of these different positions. And that's the first thing that you're going to be worried about. And so if we're comparing different initiators, we have to think about what is their kit? What is it there to do? And, the first thing that comes to mind is that, well, if we're trying to deal with these opening positions with our initiator util, the dog is not really going to necessarily get through all these different positions and even get to the jet, or even maybe even necessarily see the jet, given that the dog has near sights. Plus the prowlers, they don't even go very far, but you can move them around a lot more and you get multiple of them. It's only really the drone that allows us to ping the jet from long range, to see the jet immediately from long range, and to be able to also take jet off that line. Because if you do get the ping, then the jet's going to have to fall off, and that allows you to take space with your team. So this is one of the reasons why Sova is one of the absolute best initiators that you could play on Icebox, because if you compare the opportunity cost between having the tool that has the verticality, because the drone can go up and down and none of the other the kind of drones or dogs can do that, and having the ability to ping at long range and to see at long range, given that you've got so many long ranges to deal with, this makes Sova sort of a no-brainer when it comes to selecting an initiator for Icebox. And so that's, I think, one of the most obvious examples I can even think of using, and we're going to revisit this as well. But we can look at a lot of different agents in this manner as well. So we'll jump straight into Breeze now. And before we looked at Sova and said, okay, this is why Sova's a really great initiator, the best one on Icebox. But I'm going to take things a few steps further, because for my Breeze comp, what I've done is I've gone and done that approach. I'm going to take you through it with each agent. I'm going to go through the opportunity cost. But then I'm going to also talk about the synergies, and I'll also talk about the strategy, because these are other really important considerations when it comes to what makes the best comp for you. Because you can pick a lot of different comps, and it can be weighed a lot towards the players, of course, like what their preferences might be. But the strategy is very important to how you actually want to play the map. And I'm also going to drop a video on the channel too about a Lotus defense kind of comp that's Loud popularized and played really well at Champions, and I think showed that it's probably the best comp, and there's a lot of reasons why. So that'll be another video. But for here, we're going to be talking about the double controllers first. This is something I really, really like. And ultimately, I don't think you can get a better stoppage than Viper on the B site. And that is one of the reasons why I think Viper is somewhat of a must, is because Viper can buy you a huge amount of value just off of time in the early portion of the round, where the other team cannot rush through this. There's no way to rush through the Viper util, the snake bite plus the poison orb. It just doesn't work, because you'll just die because of the vulnerability, and the damage output's pretty crazy, and it lasts for a long time. So that creates a lot of time early in the round when your team knows that the other team cannot rush through this. The other thing that's really cool about Viper, on top of how well she can anchor and the stoppage power that she has at the start of the round, is the wall is really awesome. I think the Viper wall for this map is very cool in mid, and I think this is a wall that you can kind of throw up every single round, because it offers you a few different things. Firstly, a huge open space, and these walls are amazing on maps that are very open. So Viper can have this open space. If Viper has like a teammate that's playing, with her, that's, let's say, the tunnel, or playing nest or whatever it might be. This wall allows you this time where the opponents can only peek through a wall to actually try to fight you. So you get very strong fights. You get the ability to kind of walk behind the wall if you want to challenge elbow control. That's also a possibility that they may not expect. But you just get all this space control behind the wall, essentially. Like, there's all this space that you just have. And a fun bonus that you get with this as well is you also have the ability to possibly actually walk through the wall in mid and play behind the wall and get this position very early on. So that's also quite annoying for the opponents to have to deal with. So going back to Viper, of course, if you switch to Viper and play different setups, or maybe you don't want to throw this wall, there's so many good walls for like retaking and just all sorts of stuff. It really is very versatile when it comes to how you want to play this map. So, all right. So we talked about Viper very briefly, and actually the one thing I didn't mention was how good the ult is as well. Obviously, the Viper ult is really good for just locking down these choke points and to really block your opponents, and also playing post plant with is really nice as well, because there's so much open space for the ult that it makes it harder for your opponents to actually find you, unless they have like specific util. But yeah, so moving to Harbor now, let's talk about Harbor. Harbor I really like because of similar reasons. Having such an open map makes the walls very, very good, but there's a few other reasons I love Harbor as well. I mean, there's so many situations where he's really good. So firstly, let's say you're attacking. I'm just going to go through a bunch of different situations. Let's say you're attacking and you're trying to plant default. If you haven't been able to, let's say, deal effectively with the players that are behind the wall here, so maybe you'll have opponents that are, in this position or this position, this cove will buy you some extra time to actually plant more favorably in this spot where the harbor actually is, because it's generally a more open plant, especially if you're playing from the main position. That plant's going to be more favorable to get. So the cove allows you to kind of block that space, or basically tank some bullets. And if this wall is up still, they're going to spam and think that they've spammed this spot. They're not going to know that they're hitting a harbor cove, I don't think. So that's another reason why it's kind of good. Obviously, you can stand in it. There's just lots of ways that having the cove can be really useful, because it's an open map. So you're able to create your own cover, even if it's just for a brief period of time. And of course, you can play into it as well with a shorty. There's lots of things you can do with a cove on a map like this. So I really love the cove. I think it's fantastic. I think it has a lot of application too when it comes to, like planting again safely on this map as well. There's just a lot of play you get with it. So cove, super love the cove. Now, the other thing with Harbor as well that I think is really cool is, especially on defense, but on offense as well, is the cascades. I think the cascades are really amazing. I'll just get this wipe all out of the way. But yeah, the cascades are like really amazing. So for example, if you're playing like backside, you can cascade here, and because as it's moving forward, you're able to kind of like hightail it out of there if you need to, and they won't know precisely where you are. You can reposition behind it. So if they're gaining space whilst it's moving forwards, you can get out of there and they're not going to realize. Whereas if you dropped a smoke, let's say you dropped the smoke here and then you're trying to run, if they go beyond the smoke, they're going to see you reposition. But the nature of how the harbor wall works, the cascade is very powerful in that way. There's a lot of very good spots for it. Of course, you can get the door with it too, depending on where you're standing. You can find angles to like block the door. If you're in the attack, similarly as well, like you can block the mid door. If you're trying to just take this position for cheap, same thing. Like if you're playing defense on the B site, you can block tunnel, you can block archers, you can block the B main position. It's just there's so many applications for this wall, depending on where you are, what you're doing. It covers basically the entire map perfectly. It's almost feels like this map was really designed for Harbor to be like one of the best agents on it, in my opinion. So I think this ability is super versatile and highly valuable. And also he has his own version of the wall. It kind of comes out weird on Valor Plant because you can't bend it around. So we'll just use the it's just a wall. It's like the Viper wall. You can use it to take a lot of space. And given the fact that Viper's going to have more static walls, you can get kind of creative with your harbor walls as the team is trying to capitalize on timings or whatever it might be, that you can throw them on the fly to cover what you need to cover on the fly. So, and also it regenerates too. So you can throw one at the beginning of the round, for some control, and then you can throw one obviously later as well. So, and the great thing with the harbor wall too is you can hear when people push through it. So really strong piece of util to cover like very wide spaces. And as far as like opportunity cost goes, the map is more constricted than it used to be. So, you know, if you were going to get like an omen or something involved and you're looking at your omen to like cover areas with the smokes, yeah, he's going to be able to get, you know, cover stuff with the smokes. But I feel like personally, you just get way more out of the harbor wall. If you, because you already have the Viper to be, you know, your other smoker. I feel like the versatility is just better personally than all of this. And I think that the flash, because the map is so open, it's gonna be harder to hit people with flashes. So I don't feel like the Omen TP, or rather, sorry, the Omen flash is going to be as good as it would be on other maps. I just don't think there's as many good spots for it for the retake either. So for me, like the Omen's util is not as valuable, and I prioritize walls on Breeze a lot higher than I prioritize the value of, or at least I should say, I think the value of walls is much higher than the value of a single normal smoke. So with all that said, you know, we got the Harbor Viper, which I really like. Let's talk about some of the other selections that we've got. KO. I think KO is really nice, really important, because KO has a few has one particularly unique thing here on this map, which is the null command. So if you're actually up against a Viper on B, I think many people will be playing Viper. Having an ability that can prevent them from feeling safe against a rush timing is really powerful, and only KO has it. The other thing that's very good as well for KO, and also by the way, if they got a chamber or like whatever, can obviously get rid of their ult too, so that's nice. But if you have a team that's like pushing you and you're on the attack and you're pushing in, it's very, very important to be able not just to have this space behind the wall. You have to be able to take the space behind. You have to take the space behind the wall as well, like if you possibly can. And once you rush through and you're starting to really send it, and the other team knows it's a rush, they're going to be rotating across the map. So you have maybe like 5 to 10 seconds to clear like these positions. Like you only have a very limited amount of time to clear these positions. So you have to be able to do it whilst your wall is up. And your wall can be useful here because what you can do is, if you have a flashing agent like we have the KO, you can flash behind the wall. And this is, if you looked at old Breeze gameplay, this is very, very important and common. You need to flash behind across the wall. People will be trying to play anti-flash, and you need to take these positions behind the wall. You have to try to do it. And so that's where the flash is very useful. So it gives you the ability to actually do that, because if you just play like post from just these positions, you're going to get annihilated, because what you do is you give your opponents the ability to basically, you know, stand, you know, in all these positions, and then essentially just hit you from both sides. Maybe they can block off, you know, the main. You're absolutely just wrecked there. So what you want is you want to be able to play these deeper positions so that, you know, as they come up through the rotation, they're like having to deal like with these individual spots, and they cannot help each other very well. And so that's one of the biggest points, is you slow them down a lot and you make it harder for them. So the KO flash is very important here for that. And in terms of, you know, what else could do this, you know, there are other agents. You could have a double duelist, maybe with a Reina and so on. But again, you lose the KO ult, you lose the KO knife. The knife I think is really good because I'm going double initiator here and double controllers, so we don't have ways to get information in the same ways as you would across the map as like a Viper or something, or sorry, as a Cypher or something. Let's say you have a Cypher or a Killjoy in there, so you have a Sentinel instead of a double initiator. Well, the knife helps to solve some of those problems because you can get that early info with the knife. You know, you can try to like basically stuff pushes with it, and you can, you know, really create a much more versatile team that's able to scale more quickly, as opposed to having, you know, this extra Sentinel. And I don't think if you play a more aggressive style where you're playing for elbow control, that you need to play a Sentinel as much. I think teams will do it, and I think it's going to work pretty well. But I like this approach where you're playing aggressively for elbow control, you're playing for mid control, you're forcing them to a spot where they cannot push you on B. They're having to kind of fight you in mid. You know, these kinds of things. You have a super strong retake, so you can give up the A side if you want, you can give up the B side if you want, you can be more active on the map. That's kind of what I'm going for with this. And with that said, let's talk about the Sova real quick. Sova has, again, the drone. We talked about the drone in the Icebox example. The drone is again very valuable here because of the long ranges that you're going to be against. On like, let's say there's like a jet with an operator up here, or a jet that's playing like the site back there. It's very similar. It's basically the same kind of concept as what we explained on Icebox. So with that said, the drone becomes, I think, the best kind of initiator drone type of util. So that's one reason why Sova is good. The Hunter's Fury is really nice as well because you can get some really sick lines with it. The back sights, like the half wall position. Obviously, you can play really far back on some of these post plant positions. This is quite common for a Sova to be doing. So it becomes like very strong in that sense. You also have, of course, the recon, and the recon's really nice when you have all these walls. All this chaos, all these walls. The recon can be quite nice to get the pings. Obviously, if there's like a Viper ult down, like throwing it in there, or having the drone in there, like there's lots of options for like good usage of this kit. And obviously, the shock darts are working really well especially with snakebite lineups, or just in general. There's some great shock lineups on this map for you to use post plant or otherwise. So I think Sova has a lot of very good and important util that you don't get with some of the other initiators. And KO is an initiator that gives you kind of like a lot of aggressive potential too, so you can play more actively and aggressively. So last thing to consider is our duelists. Now, in my strategy, that we're kind of going with here, it's a lot more forward. There's a lot of forward momentum. So if we look at who would we also have in the duelist slot, I mean, we've got, there's Reyna, and there's Raze, and there's Phoenix, and there's Yoru. So let's quickly try to eliminate them. So Yoru, I think there's definitely tech that you can create for Yoru, but as we're talking about all of these synergies, I think with Yoru, you have to really have a comp. You can't just slot him in. It has to be that there's some deliberate synergies there. I don't know what those would be just yet. I'd have to give it more thought. And considering I'm trying to make a generally very strong and versatile comp, I'm not considering Yoru, so he goes in the bin. Reyna can work. Reyna has the flashes, but I feel like there's other agents that will have more. We can talk about that. So Reyna goes in the bin. Phoenix has another wall, and walls are good, but his flash is a bit limited. I would say his ult is okay. Molly's okay. It just doesn't feel like Phoenix is giving us a lot of value here. So we'll talk more about that as we narrow it down. Raze has the get in ability with the satchels, but the Raze kit's really terrible on this map. The boombot's a 4-second boombot. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't do anything. The satchels, yeah, you can get in, but you can get in with a neon run or the dashes just as well. The paint shells, it's a very open map, so you don't have a lot of good spots for the paint shells, to be honest, to get value. Paint shells are much better on maps with enclosed spaces. This is a very open map. The showstopper is similar principle, like very open map, hard to get value from the showstopper. The showstopper is really good on enclosed maps where it's hard to get through a choke, but you can satchel through with the showstopper out, and people have to run away, and you might still be able to get a kill because you can kind of bank it on a wall, and maybe the splash damage will get them. We don't really have these dynamics here on this map, so Razor's kit seems ultimately quite poor on this map to me. This leaves us with Jet, and it leaves us with Neon. So Jet and Neon. So Jet's really good because you can play these aggressive operator angles, and you have the dash to keep you safe. So, either you're in nest and you can dash away, or you're like walking down elbow as your defender and you can dash away, or you're trying to come out of the door and you're trying to walk down and dash away, take a deep off angle on A main, dash away. Like this, there's a lot of opportunities to get early aggression with the dash, making things safe, and with an operator. Similarly on the attack, you get the dash in and then the cloud burst to create some more safety and just to claim that quick space. So Jet has a lot of kind of get in ability that's quite powerful, and the same thing on this site as well. There's always this dynamic of, okay, I'm in the cloud burst. Do I go out of the cloud burst? Do I stay in the cloud burst? Do I put the cloud burst in such a way that I could kind of like go down here, or that I could come out around here? Like having that 50-50 kind of guessing game as well. It's a very strong dynamic that Jet has unique to her as a duelist. So I like Jet a lot. And also the knives, I think on a long range map with the instant kill from the left click at any range, it allows her to have that eco, the economy that she can kind of rely on the knives and not buy around, so that she can kind of guarantee get that operator in action. And then obviously when she gets the knives, it can turn around by herself. So very strong on this map. So Jet was like the prime consideration for me. But I actually saw a lot of people when I talked about this on Twitter suggest Neon, and as I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, Neon actually sounds actually awesome, because Neon has that same kind of get in ability where Neon has the high gear, so she can kind of run in really fast and slide around. She has the fast lane, which is another wall. We already have a bunch of walls, but I like the idea that with the fast lane, Neon can use it as she kind of sees fit, depending on the situation. So if you get here and like the site's completely clear, they've probably fallen back to yellow or whatever. So Neon can even like basically like wall forwards and just get even more aggressive, and then start throwing. Maybe there's like another stun that's left, so Neon has more options to kind of be annoying with the wall. The stun itself very strong. I think you can stun basically every position, and there's lineups for most positions on both sides. The stun is really sick to get in with, and we talked about how important it was to be able to take the forward space behind the wall. And I think with the Neon stuns, you're going to be able to do that very effectively, especially combined with the KO flashes. I think there's a lot of value to like getting in and getting more space with Neon. The other thing that's really cool is the overdrive. The overdrive is, of course, the lightning fingers, and you can spam that through walls and Viper ults, and you can get free connections and damage. And so it's quite a strong punish to the meta that we would expect, which is a meta that has a lot of wall-based agents like Viper, Harbor, and so on. So I think Neon has a lot of value here, and I think it's interesting with the Jet. You will actually have a more passive play style, but I think with Jet you could play more of a control style, because you'll be controlling more forward space on the defense, and also even on the offense because of the play style you would have. But I think with Neon you get more aggression. So it really depends on which version you want to go with. I think both are good. I think based off of the nerfs recently to Jet, maybe Neon could be better. We'll have to see what teams do. But with all of that said, that's my kind of Breeze comp explained. I hope that it made sense, and that you have some additional kind of thinking tools yourself to maybe look at maps and just think about like how the map will play, how other people will play, what the synergies are, like what the opportunity cost is, and that you can kind of have some fun yourself, like jumping into Valorplant and coming up with some cool comps. All right, if you got any cool comps or you think my comp sucks, please let me know in the comments. Hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.